The warship relentless cut through the void of space like a silent predator. Captain Riva, a seasoned officer with years of battle behind him, stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the display. The enemy, a coalition of alien species, was scattered across the sector, retreating from the might of the Terran fleet. All systems green, the ensign reported, her voice steady despite the tension crackling in the air. Captain Riva nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He knew the enemy wasn't retreating because they were outgunned. No, they feared something far greater than Terran weaponry. They fear her, Riva muttered under his breath. Sir, the ensign looked at him curiously. Nothing, Riva replied, but deep down, he knew that the aliens weren't running from his fleet, they were running from the one thing that made them tremble in their very cores. The alien coalition was vast, comprising dozens of species, each with their unique technology and tactics. They had once believed themselves superior to the newly emerging humans. When humanity first ventured into the stars, these aliens saw them as nothing more than primitive creatures, bold, perhaps, but insignificant in the grand scheme of the galaxy. That arrogance had cost them dearly. The reports of the fear had first surfaced during humanity's early conflicts. At first, the aliens thought it was some new weapon, an advanced AI or biological horror designed to destabilize their ranks. But as the story spread and the fear grew, it became clear that it wasn't a weapon at all. It was a person. Her name was Sarah. Sarah stood alone on the observation deck of the Terran flagship Resolute, staring out into the swirling nebula. The silence of space wrapped around her, but her mind was anything but quiet. She could feel the distant stirrings of terror from the alien forces. They didn't know exactly where she was, but they felt her presence. They always did. It had started as an accident, a quirk of biology combined with the intense genetic experimentation humanity had undergone to survive in deep space. Sarah had developed something no one could have predicted: a psychic connection to the very fabric of fear itself. She didn't just sense fear, she could amplify it, twist it, turn it into a weapon more potent than any gun or bomb. At first, the Terran military had been cautious. They didn't know what to make of her, but as the alien coalition's fear of her grew, the Terran leadership realized they had something unique, a weapon that could bring entire fleets to their knees without firing a shot. She had become the living embodiment of terror, a legend among the stars, whispered in hushed tones across alien command centers. The name Sarah was never spoken aloud, for fear that even the mention of it would bring doom upon them. Captain, the communications officers interrupted Riva's thoughts. We've intercepted another transmission from the coalition. Play it, Riva ordered, his voice firm. The alien voice that crackled through the speakers was shaky, filled with dread. We know she's out there. We will not fight. We cannot. Tell your human weapon to stay away, or we will surrender everything. We will give up our planets, our resources. Just keep her away. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances, but Riva remained stoic. It's working, he thought to himself. Sarah's presence is breaking them down from within. But something nagged at him. Sarah's abilities were growing stronger with each battle. The last engagement had left an entire alien fleet in disarray without a single shot fired. They had simply run. The fear she instilled had become a living thing, spreading like a virus through their minds, consuming their will to fight. And yet, Riva couldn't shake the feeling that this power came at a cost. Sarah was becoming more isolated, more detached from her humanity. Was she still the person she once was, or had she become something darker, something uncontrollable? On the alien capital ship Korok, panic reigned. Supreme Commander Vilkar paced nervously, his 3 hearts pounding in his chest. She's out there. I can feel her, he muttered to himself. His subordinates dared not speak. They had tried everything: psychic shields, mind-blocking devices, even employing their own psychics to counter her influence. But nothing worked. The fear she generated wasn't just psychic, it was primal, deep-rooted in the darkest corners of the mind. Sir, we need to retreat, one of his advisors urged. We can't face her. The fleet will crumble. Vilkar slammed his claw hand down on the console. Retreat. We are the mightiest force in the galaxy. How can we be brought to our knees by one human? She is not just a human, the advisors whispered, his voice trembling. She is the embodiment of fear itself. As the Terran fleet closed in on the alien stronghold, Sarah prepared herself. The fear of the aliens was palpable. Even from this distance, it throbbed in her mind like a living thing, hungry and eager to be unleashed. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, letting the waves of terror wash over her. She could feel the minds of the alien soldiers, their commanders, even the civilians on the planets below. They all shared the same fear. They all knew she was coming. Let them run, she whispered to herself. Let them tremble. Back on the Relentless, Captain Reva watched the alien fleet scatter on the tactical display. No shots had been fired, no orders had been given, but the battle was already won. Send the signal, Reva ordered. We'll accept their surrender. As the communications officers relayed the message, Reva stared out into the void, his thoughts drifting back to Sarah. He didn't know what the future held for her, or for humanity, now that they had this terrible power at their disposal. But one thing was clear, the aliens, with all their advanced technology and superior numbers, feared only one thing above all else. And her name was Sarah. The atmosphere aboard Relentless was tense, even as victory seemed inevitable. Captain Reva stood motionless, his eyes still locked on the tactical display as the alien fleet continued to disband, ships fleeing in every direction. The crew had grown used to these strange, bloodless victories and eerie silence that followed the mere mention of Sarah's presence. Sir, the comms officers called out, we've received a formal surrender request. They're offering full planetary control of the sector if we agree to a ceasefire. Captain Reva's expression didn't change. Acknowledged. Hold the line for now. His mind was miles away, lingering on the same thought that had haunted him for months. How far is too far? Sarah Saturday in her quarters irresolute, the cold hum of the ship's engines a distant vibration beneath her feet. The lights were dim, casting long shadows across the metal walls. She stared into the void of space beyond the reinforced windows, her thoughts spiraling deeper into the chaos that came with each victory. With every battle, her power grew. It wasn't just fear she was controlling anymore. It was something darker. It felt like an insatiable hunger, feeding on the terror of alien minds. Every time she reached out, it was harder to pull back, harder to remember what it was like to be human. A soft chime broke the silence. It was the AI's neutral voice. Sarah, incoming message from Captain Reva. Patch it through, she said without toning. Reva's voice crackled over the comm but laced with an edge of concern. The aliens are offering total surrender. They'll hand over the entire sector if we cease hostilities. She remained silent for a moment. Ed, I wanted your take. They're terrified. Sarah, terrified of you. He hesitated, his voice dropping slightly. How far are we willing to push this? Sarah leaned back, closing her eyes, feeling the ripple of fear that echoed from the alien minds light years away. They won't fight us again, Captain, not after this. But at what cost? Reva asked, almost as if to himself. On the alien flagship Korok, Supreme Commander Vilkar huddled with his advisors. The fear was thick in the air, a tangible force that clung to every mind on board. They had lost without a single engagement, without even the chance to fire a weapon. She is close, Vilkar said, his voice barely more than a whisper. The advisors exchanged nervous glances. They had known defeat before, but never like this. Never had their entire species been brought to the brink of collapse by a single human. The stories they'd heard of her powers growing, of her ability to tap into their deepest fears and break them without lifting a weapon, it was more than any of them could bear. We must offer more, one of the advisors suggested. Not just this sector. We'll give them anything, our core worlds if necessary, just to end this nightmare. Vilkar's eyes burned with anger, but deep down, even he knew there was no fight left in them. We have no choice. Sarah's fingers twitched involuntarily, her mind racing. She had always been different. Even before her abilities manifested, she was sharper, more resilient than others her age. But now, she was losing herself to this power. The fear, as the Terrans had come to call it, was intoxicating, and she found herself sinking deeper into it with every passing day. She could feel the alien minds out there, recoiling at the thought of her. They were terrified, but that terror gave her power. The temptation to push harder, to crush them completely, was overwhelming, but something within her still fought against it, a small part of her that clung to her humanity. A knock at her door pulled her from her thoughts. It slid open. revealing General Kane, the head of the Terran military. "You're not here to congratulate me, are you?" Sarah asked, her voice colder than she intended. Kane stepped into the room, his expression unreadable. "No, I'm here because we're concerned." "We?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "The Terran High Command," Kane clarified. "You've achieved more than any of us ever imagined. You've turned the tide of the war without shedding a drop of blood." But he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "But you're losing control, Sarah." Her jaw tightened. "You think I don't know that?" "We're not asking you to stop," Kane continued, "but we need to understand how far can you take this, and how far will you let it take you?" Sarah turned away from him, gazing back out into the stars. She could feel the fear of the alien coalition buzzing in her mind. Like a swarm of insects, they were desperate, on the verge of total collapse. With just a nudge, she could destroy them completely, without a single Terran ship firing a shot. It was so easy, too easy. "I can end this war," she said, her voice low but firm. "I can make sure they never challenge humanity again." Kane stepped closer, his voice soft but insistent. "At what cost? We don't want to lose you in the process." Sarah laughed bitterly. "Maybe you already have." The Alien Council had gathered in their final refuge, far from the front lines. But even here, the fear was inescapable. They had tried to fight. They had deployed their greatest warriors, their most advanced weapons, but nothing could withstand the force of Sarah's mind. Her name alone sent waves of panic through their ranks. Supreme Commander Vilkar stood before the council, his face etched with defeat. "We cannot fight this. We cannot fight her. The humans have harnessed something far beyond our understanding." One of the council members, a creature with long, slender limbs and countless eyes, spoke in a trembling voice. "What do we do then? Surrender our entire civilization?" Vilkar nodded slowly. "We have no choice. If we continue, she will drive us to madness. We must yield, or be destroyed." Back aboard the Resolute, Sarah felt the moment their decision was made. The alien minds across the sector flickered with resignation, a collective surrender that rippled through space like a tidal wave. It was done. But instead of triumph, Sarah felt an emptiness settling over her. She had won, but at what cost? She could no longer tell where her fear manipulation ended and where her own thoughts began. She turned to General Kane, who had remained silent through it all. "It's over." Kane exhaled, the weight of the war lifting from his shoulders. "And what now?" Sarah's gaze remained distant, her voice soft. "Now,